Light Morning Live, right on Liberation TV. And I'm joined by Mr. Sean Tembo. He's the president of Patriots for Economic Progress right here in the studios. And looking at the 2020 alternative budget, which was presented on Thursday by the Patriots for Economic Progress. But before that, just play a short clip to get to understand what went on during the presentation of that 2020 alternative budget by PEP president and his team.
Patriots for Economic Progress (PEP) has unveiled its 85 billion kwacha 2020 alternative national budget. This is the fourth alternative national budget the opposition political party has presented since 2016. Unveiling the alternative national budget in Lusaka, Patriots for Economic Progress President Sean Tembo said the 2020 alternative national budget represents 25% gross domestic product and will be largely financed by domestically generated resources.
A total of 85 billion 877 million 300,104 kwacha in the 2020 alternative national budget, or 26.2% of the gross domestic product. Of this amount, 76.8 billion, or 89.5% of the total budget, will be financed by domestic revenues and 1.38 billion by domestic debt, whereas foreign financing and grants will account for 7.6 billion, or 8.9% of the budget. We propose that the proportion of the budget that is financed from domestic and external borrowing is significantly reduced by more than 75%. This is because our country, ladies and gentlemen, is already heavily and unsustainably indebted.
Tembo said in the proposed alternative national budget, allocations to farmer input support program, social cash transfer and CDF will be scrapped off and money is channeled to other need areas such as construction of grain storage facilities across the country. He said allocation to defense and security will also be reduced by 50%, with allocations to road infrastructure also reduced by 60%. Tembo asked that his party's vision for economic diversification is centered on growing the agriculture sector, tourism and audio and visual entertainment sectors.
The allocation to roads infrastructure has also been reduced by about 60% in the alternative budget. And why we are proposing a reduction in the allocation to roads is because we appreciate the contribution of roads to economic development, but it is not the only important infrastructure area that requires to be developed.
And PEP chairman for mobilization, Henry Mleya, who presented the second part of the alternative national budget, said his party will introduce sweeping tax reforms to enhance revenue collection. He said pay-as-you-earn threshold will be increased to 4,000 kwacha, as well as revised income, corporate and value-added taxes. Mleya said PEP will also propose to introduce a 15% tax on all alcohol beverages, as well as a new tax on all gambling activities.
Proposes to make two key adjustments to pay-as-you-earn tax. Firstly, we propose to increase the tax-exempt amount to 4,000 kwacha, so that anyone with a total gross salary of $4,000 or less should be exempted from paying tax. Secondly, we propose to abolish all tax bans for payee, and instead, a flat tax of 25% is proposed.
Reporting in Lusaka, I'm Lovely Kayombo.
On Wednesday, when the president for Patriots for Economic Progress was just unveiling their alternative budget for 2020. Mr. President, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, comrade, and a very good morning to the Zambian people.
Okay. I'll start with maybe before we go to the nitty-gritty of what you propose in your budget. Maybe look at how much we are proposing to spend in the 2020 years as a party for PEP.
Yes. Yeah, so when you look at the official national budget for 2020, you realize that the Honorable Minister of Finance was proposing to spend 106 billion kwacha. And you realize that about 32% of that amount was to be funded by borrowing, which means when you look at internally generated resources, it was accounting for about 68%. So in our alternative budget, the PeP 2020 alternative budget, our budget basically amounted to about 85 billion kwacha. Now you see that this is a reduction of approximately 20 billion kwacha compared to the official budget. And the reason we basically proposed a budget of about 85 billion kwacha is basically going with the principle of cutting your dress according to the size of your cloth. It is pointless to spend so much money when you do not have the money and you have to go and borrow basically to supplement your expenditure. You need to be able to spend within what is available, within the resources that you actually have as a nation. And basically that is where our alternative national budget is founded. And when you look at the issue of national debt in this country, both domestic debt and external debt, you find that we are literally struggling to service our debt obligations. When you look at domestic debt, that is basically debt such as treasury bills and government bonds, which are issued by the Bank of Zambia on behalf of government, you find that those currently stand at almost 60 billion kwacha. And every month, a portion of that domestic debt basically matures and needs to be paid out by government. And we've seen government struggle to basically honor those obligations for treasury bills and government bonds. On a number of occasions, government has had to basically reach out to other parastatal bodies, such as NAPSA and other related institutions like Workmen's Compensation, to basically ask them to borrow money on a short-term basis to be able to honor these debt obligations. What that means is that the government is under stress in terms of maintaining this debt. So if government is currently under stress maintaining the current debt that we already have, then why would the Honorable Minister of Finance come up with a budget which is going to be funded by about 32% debt? So we are basically saying we need to borrow more to finance our expenditure for 2020. So for all intents and purposes, the budget by the Honorable Minister of Finance to us did not reflect the reality that is on the ground in terms of this country, whereby we're already struggling with the huge amount of debt which is already there.
Okay. Now, in terms of financing this budget, I think you said you base more on local sources.
Yes.
How would you intend to mobilize that resource within the country to finance this 85 billion budget?
Yes. Yeah, so basically in terms of our projections for mobilizing internal resources, there are two components when you talk about internal resources, when you look at the resource envelope for a budget. There is basically the tax revenue, and then you have the non-tax revenue. The tax revenue is made up of the usual pay-as-you-earn, the income tax, and value-added tax. We propose a number of changes in each of these tax types. For example, for pay-as-you-earn, we propose to increase the threshold for non-taxable income from the current 3,000 kwacha to 4,000 kwacha. Because the last time this threshold was revised was more than 2 years ago. And what we're saying is that there has been a lot of inflation in between. And the value of that money has basically been lost. So people need to be given a relief by increasing the threshold for non-taxable income for pay-as-you-earn. And then for income tax, which is basically corporate tax, we are essentially proposing that in order to increase the collections for this type of tax, we need to be able to create greater capacity for the Zambia Revenue Authority, because currently you find that most of our local investors, especially people from these countries like China, South Africa, they don't pay tax. In other words, they don't pay their fair share of tax. There's a lot of tax evasion that goes on, and this scourge of tax evasion, especially by foreign companies, is able to take place because our tax authority, ZRA, does not have enough capacity to basically collect the tax that is due to the Treasury. And the reason ZRA does not have capacity is because the Treasury does not allocate enough money to ZRA so that ZRA can be able to attract and retain appropriately qualified and experienced personnel. When you look at the best brains in the tax field, you'll find that all of them are in the private sector. And these are the ones who work hand in hand with these foreign multinational companies to engage in tax planning and basically reduce their tax liability. So ZRA needs to be capacitated. It needs to be funded in such a way that it is able to attract and retain the best brains that this country has in terms of taxation issues, so that we have the best competence vested in the government as opposed to the best competence in taxation being vested in the private sector.
Okay. Now, about three key issues of interest. You propose to scrap off FISIP, CDF, and also social transfer. Maybe to start with FISIP, what is your justification before we go to the other two?
Yes. So when you look at FISIP, basically, which is the fertilizer input support program, it's basically a subsidy to farmers, so that farmers can be able to produce more maize. So the way this works, of course, is farmers are given seeds and fertilizer, certain value of fertilizer at a discounted price. So what we are saying is that the biggest problem that we have with regard to our agricultural sector is not necessarily production. The biggest problem that we have is a market for the agricultural produce that people produce. We've seen in years that we've had a bumper harvest, right? The 2016-2017 farming season, where the country produced in excess of 3.6 million metric tons, as well as about 2 million metric tons of soybeans. There was no significant change in the lives of the people when you go in the rural areas. There was no significant change. Why? Because there was no market for their crops. A bag of maize was selling for 60 kwacha, and yet it cost people maybe 75 kwacha to produce a single bag of maize. So they are making a loss. That is not even adding the labor that they spend, because farming is an entire year's project. So you are putting in your labor and everything else, and then you make a loss at the end of it. So for as long as we don't address the marketing side of agriculture, agriculture will not be a sustainable operation for most of the citizens. We want to make agriculture a business. We don't want to make it an occupation only. And the only way to do that is, for us, what we are proposing is that instead of pumping in money on the production side through FISIP, we would pump in money on the marketing side by guaranteeing a price for the agricultural produce, the key agricultural grain products like maize, soybeans. And that will ensure that, let's say we guarantee a price to say, come what may, next year, government will buy maize at 150 kwacha a bag, or soybeans at 300 kwacha a bag. So as the farmers are investing in their season, the crop season, they know how much their crop is going to be bought at the end of the day. And that will allow farmers to invest into their own production, because they are guaranteed of the price at which their crops will be bought. And then it is the duty of government now to go and look for external markets for this produce on behalf of the farmers. But government would buy and stockpile that, and then go and look for market outside. It would not be the headache of a farmer to look for market by themselves. So basically that is the model we are proposing. And instead of funding the production side through FISIP, we would fund the marketing side by guaranteeing a price at which the products would be bought, the agricultural products would be bought from the farmers.
Okay. Yes. And also the issue of the social cash transfer also, we plan to scrap it off.
Yes. Yeah, so when you look at that 1 billion, excess of 1 billion kwacha, which is allocated to social cash transfer, you realize that the way the social cash transfer basically works is that a number of beneficiaries are selected, and then these people are given very small amounts, as little as 80 kwacha, 100 kwacha, 120 kwacha per month. And what we're saying is that for a household being given 100 kwacha, it would not really significantly improve their livelihoods. To some extent, it even encourages laziness because they are just seated there and then they are waiting for that small amount. It prevents them from going out there to fetch for themselves. So what we are proposing as Patriots for Economic Progress is that instead of pumping in that 1 billion plus kwacha into social cash transfer, that money should be taken and used to recapitalize the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission, the CEC, which has the mandate of giving loans, essentially small loans, to local entrepreneurs. so that people can be allowed to access those small loans and start a business. You know, when you go around the compound and you ask people how much they need to start a capital, for people who sit in big government offices, they think that people need a lot of money to start a business. But people just need as little as 2,000 kwacha, as little as 5,000 kwacha to start a business. And they'll start a business there which will be very sustainable. And then they can start paying, let's say they are asked to pay 200 kwacha, someone gets 5,000 kwacha, and then they start paying 200 kwacha every week from their business. They'll be able to repay a loan within a reasonable period of time. And then CEC can be able to have offices in all the locations across the country. Not only a single town office, like Lusaka only has one office. Under a PeP government, CEC would have as many offices as we have police stations around. So that a given area, let's say Kawata, Rivara, Chilenje, they are able to go to a local CEC office, not where you get on a bus or what, they walk there to go and make their monthly payments, and then also get a loan to top up or a fresh loan. That way, we encourage entrepreneurship so that people can be able to sustain themselves financially. Because regardless of how much we promote commerce and trade, you can never create enough job opportunities for each and every person. So those other individuals, those other citizens who do not have jobs, who cannot be employed, they can have the opportunity of running a small business for themselves. And when you look at the demography of this country, you realize that more than 50% of our people are unskilled. They do not have a skill, which means they do not really stand a good chance of being formally employed in terms of getting a formal job. And the question is, what do you do for those people? They need to sustain themselves. And what the answer to that is, we need to be able to promote CEC so that CEC can be able to extend loans to these people, and CEC can spread its presence across the country to each and every corner of Zambia.
Okay. Yes. The last part is that there's constituency development fund also. I think you mentioned something before you answer the question about MPs focusing on,
implementing petty projects in their constituencies.
Yes. Yes. Maybe also try to elaborate more why you feel that this fund should not be given to these MPs for them to implement projects in their constituencies.
Yes, so what we're saying is that, when you look at the governance system of this country, we have structures in place. We have the central government with its various ministries, including the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Ministry of Works and Supply, you understand, which is supposed to undertake any construction-related projects across the country, in each and every constituency. They have the competency, they have the engineers in that particular ministry to basically implement and monitor projects. And then we have the local government governance structure, where we have the local authorities, we have the councils, city councils, municipal councils, and of course district councils across the country. These are the structures through which development is supposed to be delivered on the ground. But then you find that this new idea, I don't even know where the idea of constituency development fund came from, but this idea of giving money to a member of parliament to undertake projects in their constituency is very problematic, because for a number of reasons. Because to start with, the officers at the constituency office, who are basically the employees, the staff for the member of parliament, would not really have the competence needed to supervise and manage a project. Let's say they want to build a classroom block, or they want to build a bridge. You understand? They won't have the competence to supervise it. At the end of the day, you find that there's a lot of poor quality work being done. On the other hand, if that bridge, which was being constructed, was done under the central government, through the Ministry of Works and Supply, or through the Ministry of Infrastructure, those people there, those structures, have the necessary competence, the engineers, to assess the materials and provide proper supervision to that project. So that money is wasted. That is not the only part. The other problem with CDF is that essentially, when an MP is given money to undertake projects in this area, and let's say he's undertaking this project, let's say a bridge project, they would have to continuously supervise that project, find out the progress, has the contractor been paid, what are the issues, ABCD. And that time which the MP is spending supervising that project is time which the MP could have been using to basically undertake their primary duties, which is basically to enact laws in parliament. Because when you look at the governance of this country, we have three arms of government. We have the judiciary, we have the executive, and then we have the legislature. The executive, its job is to implement and deliver development projects across the country. The legislature, which is parliament, their job is basically to enact laws and basically, are now laws which are no longer progressive. So when you have an MP, instead of focusing on undertaking research on the development of the law and coming up with ways of enacting better laws, they instead go to their rural constituency to go and supervise a bridge construction project under CDF. It means that they are not focusing on their primary duty, and that is why when you look at the quality of laws that we have been making in this country, they are very poor quality laws to a large extent. The fact that we were celebrating in Hero Stadium not so long ago about a new constitution, and barely 2 years later we are talking about revising the constitution, basically is testimony to the low quality of laws that our parliament enacts. And part of the reason why we are enacting poor quality laws is because our MPs cannot focus on their primary duty, which is to enact laws. They are busy supervising petty projects in their respective constituencies.
Okay, in 5 minutes, I've got 3 questions on the CDF itself. We have about MPs who have been in parliament for more than 15 to 20 years. And yet, if you go to their constituencies, there's nothing to show. And yet they get the CDF fund. And you are saying you want to scrap off this fund. So are you saying, is it the reason why these people are not able to implement projects in their constituencies?
Well,
because someone would make 50 could have been to some rural, like go to this rural parts of the country. They get this money on a yearly basis, and yet there's nothing to show of how they spend that money in terms of changing the lives of the people in the constituency.
Well, like I indicated earlier, the duty to take development to all parts of the country lies with the executive arm of government. The president and his ministers, it is their duty to take development to all corners of Zambia. It is not the responsibility of an MP to take development there now. The responsibility of an MP is to debate in parliament and pass laws in parliament, and occasionally consult his constituents in terms of which laws need to be passed and which laws need to be removed from our study books. Again, when you look at this CDF thing, to a large extent, I think it was a political move on the part of the ruling parties. I know it wasn't brought by PF, it was, I think, brought by the MMD, but it was a political move meant to shift the blame of underdevelopment from the government to a member of parliament. And when you look at the structure of how these CDF funds are dispersed, you find that they are not that much. It's not really the kind of money you can bring significant development to a constituency, especially rural constituencies which span a number of districts. And then you are given, what, 3 million kwacha? What kind of development can you take? So you find that the ruling party will use the central government to take development to areas which are represented by their MPs, and then they won't take development to areas represented by the opposition, and then come election time, they'll blame the opposition to say, we gave these people CDF, look, they haven't developed your area, but for us, we developed our area. And yet their area has not been developed using CDF, they have been developed using central government funds. You understand? So it's pretty much a lot of politicking, and it's a pity that, in this country, we spend so much time doing things for purposes of political benefit, as opposed to doing things for the benefit of the Zambian people.
Okay. I think within 3 minutes, I know it was a lengthy budget, but I want you to answer within 4 minutes. We propose to reduce allocations to defense and security and also road infrastructure. Maybe you can compress the two. You spoke on defense and security to the different point, and also on roads and so maybe within 4 or 5 minutes, maybe you can compress the two and just justify why you think that these two sectors, defense and security and also road infrastructure, you reduce the allocations to these two.
Yeah, so basically, when you look at defense and security, I think the amounts allocated, which was amounting to more than think close to 15 billion kwacha, was, in my view, totally unjustified. Because when you look at the biggest challenges we have in this country, we have a challenge with our economy. Our economy is basically on the deathbed. We have a challenge of poverty. The levels of poverty in this country are too high. And if we have resources and we need to allocate these resources, we need to allocate them in areas where we have a problem. We don't have significant security problems in this country. Unlike other countries in the region or in sub-Saharan Africa, which have a problem of terrorism, for example, we don't have that kind of problem. So why should we be allocating so much money to give people to go and buy firearms and other weapons of war when our people are perishing in poverty there? So we need to allocate resources according to priorities, according to what is most important. If we had problems of terrorism in the country, for example, then we would be saying, no, we need to employ more security personnel so that we are able to properly police the country and reduce the incidences of the security risk. But we don't have those problems. So that is basically the basis of our justification to say we need to allocate money to defense and security, but not too much money, not all the money. And then the citizens wallow in poverty. Because the greatest security risk that this country has is the high levels of unemployment and poverty. These youths who are sitting around idle, doing nothing every day, this is our greatest security threat as a nation. For as long as we have people doing nothing, then there will always be a security threat to this country, because these people can be used by anyone. We've seen that the ruling party has basically used these unemployed people to arm them with pangas and pistols and go and cause violence in these by-elections. So that is our biggest security risk, people who are unemployed. If people are employed, there is no way anyone can use them and say, okay, we'll give you 50 kwachas or 100 kwachas. Come here are pangas, go and intimidate that political party, or go and intimidate us. That wouldn't happen, but it is the issue of unemployment. Okay. Now, when you look at the other component, what was the last part? Road infrastructure, yes. We appreciate the fact that roads are a key driver to development, economic development. And we also appreciate the extent to which the Patriotic Front government has basically developed our road network. We appreciate that. Yeah. But what we are saying is that road infrastructure is not the only important infrastructure that needs to be developed in this country. For example, I was giving you an example of our inability to store our grain. Yes. The consumption of this country, the annum, in terms of maize, is about 700 to 800,000 metric tons. And when we produce, let's say, 3.5 million metric tons in the 2017 farming season, that would have been enough for us to feed on for 5 years. But the following year, when there was a partial drought, people were almost on the verge of dying of hunger. You know why? Because we don't have storage capacity for grain. Every time we have a bumper harvest, whatever is not eaten goes to waste. It gets rotten. So what we're saying is that instead of pumping in all the money on road, everyday road, we need to shift our attention a bit from the roads to other critical infrastructure, like grain storage. Grain storage, we need to pump in resources in those grain silos, where grain can be stored for as long as 30 years. You understand? So that when we have excess, we store. And when we have a deficit, the way we have a drought this year, we can be able to get from our strategic grain reserves and then be able to feed our people. You understand? It's a matter of common sense, really. It's a pity that we are even arguing about it.
No, thank you very much, Fokan. I know there was a lot of things that you had proposed, but for now we can end here. We can still organize for another, maybe next week to come and just elaborate more on what you proposed for the 2020 or 20 national budget.
Indeed, it's always a pleasure, and a very good morning to the Zambian people.
I was talking to Mr. Tembo, who is the president for Patriots for Economic Progress, in our studios, and just talking about the PEP 2020 or 20 budget, which was presented on Thursday at Intercontinental Hotel right here in Osaka. Just go for a short break. Be back on the other side. Stay tuned.